Leslie Marshall and Angela McGlowan. Ladies, good to see you. Leslie, I want to go to you first. How do you deal with the anger, with the real passion behind the Tea Party movement if you're a Democrat?
Well, you know, it's funny because I wrote about this the other day, David. I mean, there are feelings, and being a woman, believe me, I know those very well. I'm quite emotional. But then there are facts, and the fact is I'm not hearing solutions to the problems being presented by these new candidates. We're also perplexed, many of us, who hear these Tea Party candidates saying they're not part of the establishment, but we've talked about this, David. I think you agreed with me. They have an R next to their name. Republicans are part of the establishment. They're going to step into Republican shoes.
The Tea Party candidates, Leslie, are the ones that have been winning from the establishment Republicans. I mean, that's what Christine O'Donnell was all about.
But when they get to Washington, they're going to be voting with Republicans.
Well, that's
unless
the
a few
question.
of them have the guts of a Scott Brown
Hold on a second.
aside.
That's a very legitimate question. And Angela, we put that to Ron Paul, among other people, about how quickly folks who claim to be for small government, once they get inside the Beltway, tend to like big government.
And Leslie's right, dealing with the fact that you can have this type of coalition, but I think with these new candidates going in, they don't want to be Rhino Republicans. They don't want to be Republicans in name only. They want to actually make a change. And look at Murkowski. She was defeated. So I think what you're saying, David, is that the Tea Party is just not anti-establishment. It's not about left and right. These are people that want to make true change. So I think these Tea Party candidates... I think
you're wrong, though. I think it is about I think it's all about anti-establishment. They are against the establishment, whether they are represented by big government inside the Beltway, big government in the state houses, or just the political establishment itself.
They're against status quo. And the challenge here in New York, I think that Cuomo should listen to the Tea Party, because in 2006, if you recall, Republicans stayed at home and Democrats took over. So I think if Cuomo really wants to beat Palladino, he needs to listen to the Tea Party,
Paul, go ahead.
Listen to what they're standing for.
Well, I agree. It's not just anti-establishment. It's we're trying to bring back our country, bring it back to the Constitution the way it was supposed to be. You know, ever since FDR, statism has increased, the state government power. And when I mean statism, I mean the power of the federal government and state government, getting in every aspect of people's lives, spending well beyond its means. I mean, when people say, oh, the government does this, does that, on whose dime? It's doing it on the children and the grandchildren's dime. I mean, this is not going to last forever.
But we have seen it before. And Sal, of course, most recently we saw it in the Reagan Revolution, when we saw people who had been just a year before, in 1979, I remember meeting some Reagan Republicans who were telling me that they felt like they were from Mars. They were treated by the Republican establishment, which was pretty moderate and middle of the road at that time. Of course, they lost with Ford. But the Reaganites were seen as the radicals. It's kind of similar this time. Until they get into power, the strong conservatives are seen as too far to the right, correct?
Yeah, yes, but look what happened, and it's a good example you just made. In 1980, we elected all these new Republican senators, most of them who weren't expected to win, and they got elected on supporting Ronald Reagan's policies. For 6 years, those were the most reliable supporters for Ronald Reagan. They're the ones that pushed the Republican caucuses and made the deals with the Blue Dog Democrats to not only get Ronald Reagan's tax cuts and economic recovery plan, but also to beef up our defense so we could bring an end to Soviet communism.
But Sal,
so
you mentioned in your notes coming into this segment that you were at a party, a wedding in Massachusetts, and you were a Reaganite back then, and your date at the time told you, please don't mention that that we're Reaganites, otherwise they'll think we're nuts, right?
That's right, and you know what happened is Reagan won in Massachusetts. So, and I think that's true today, is that there are a lot of people that get scared off being identified with the Tea Party movement. They don't want to be part of a movement, but in reality they're with us because they're as concerned as everybody else is about the growing national debt, the spending, the growing government. I mean, people are fearful that we're going to damage this economy, that it's going to be a poor prospect for our children and grandchildren unless we make change.
But Reagan was an example. To Leslie's point, today's radicals could be tomorrow's establishment if they get in power. Folks, we got to leave it at that. Coming up on deck, if only the White House...